The car finally gave out. Jeff hit the dashboard in frustration. It was bad enough that the car had to break down, but at night, in the rain, in the middle of God knows where he was, it was a fitting end to his bad week. The week had seen his wife leave him, taking the kids with her. He had been demoted at his job and was now forced to go back on the road as a salesman. Now this had happened and things weren't going to get any better anytime soon. Jeff decided that he might as well try to find a way out of his mess. He considered waiting in his car for another car to come by and help him. The road wasn't used that often though, and that might take hours, so Jeff decided to first walk down the road to see if there were any other choices. After walking for a half an hour in the pounding rain, Jeff finally came across an old house in the woods. Now, Jeff had seen enough horror movies to make him turn back, but the rain alone was enough to override his sense of fear and trepidation. He walked up the winding road to the door. The house looked to be very old and not kept up well, and Jeff wondered if anyone lived there anymore. He knocked on the door and, to his surprise, it was answered rather quickly. An older man, looking to be in his late 70s, asked him what he wanted.
Yeah, what do you want?
Jeff explained his situation and asked if the man had a phone or some way to help.
Hi, good evening, sir. I'm sorry to bother you, but my car broke down up the road. Can I use your phone to call a tow truck?
The old man said he was wary of travelers, but decided that Jeff looked honest enough and let him in to use the phone.
Yeah, I really don't like the traveling kind around here, but you seem honest enough. Come on in.
Jeff thanked him and asked his name.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate it. My name's Jeff, and you are?
He said his name was Joseph Palmer and told Jeff the number of the nearest garage. Jeff made his way through to the phone, noticing that the house looked about as old inside as it did outside, and was surprised that there was even a phone at the place. He called the garage, but they said there was nothing they can do until the morning, and they would meet him in his car at noon. Mr. Palmer offered Jeff the guest room to sleep in for the night. Jeff was a bit wary at spending the night at such a spooky old house, but decided that the walk back in the rain and sleeping in the car couldn't be much safer than staying at the house. He accepted and was shown to the room. The house was adorned with antique everything. Not a piece of furniture seemed to have been purchased in the last 60 years or more. Mr. Palmer showed him to the room and bidding him good night. The man was nice, but the whole situation still left Jeff unnerved. He just tried to tell himself that he had watched far too many horror movies as a child. The bedroom had a canopy bed, one old lamp, a single window, and a red carpet. The house was eerily quiet as Jeff laid himself down on the bed. Quiet, except for a creak here and a thump there. By now, Jeff's imagination had him too paranoid to sleep, as he heard Mr. Palmer outside the room, walking up and down the hallway outside. Up he went, and down he went. Then the footsteps stopped, right outside his room. Jeff waited, yet nothing happened. A half an hour passed, and yet he heard nothing except the rain beating outside and the wind howling as the storm blew on. Finally, sleep slowly overcame Jeff, even with his nervousness heightened. Slowly, his eyes closed. though he thought he could almost hear something scratching at his door. Jeff awoke. The storm had passed and daylight was shining through the window curtains. Happy that all his nervousness was for nothing, Jeff got out of bed and checked his watch. He had slept in until 11:20 and had to leave quickly before the people from the garage got to his car. Leaving the room, he was greeted by Mr. Palmer. Palmer asked him if he had slept well. Jeff replied that he had, though he had trouble falling asleep. Palmer laughed and asked if he was afraid of the old house at night in the middle of nowhere. Jeff admitted that maybe he was a bit afraid, but he felt silly for it now. He thanked Mr. Palmer and said he had to leave quickly to get to his car. He turned to leave when suddenly something banged his head and everything went quiet dark. When Jeff came to, he was tied to a chair in the basement. The place reeked of horrible smells. Mr. Palmer walked up to him with a large knife in his hand. Jeff screamed and tried to free himself, but only tired himself out. He looked up in horror at Mr. Palmer and asked him why he was doing this and why now.
Why are you doing this? Why now?
Palmer looked at him and answered,
You see, last night, you would have been nervous, full of fear, and ready for any attack I would do. Nah, Jeff. That wasn't the right time. Everyone expects to be attacked at night. But during the morning, people are more relaxed and fear is low, making them blind to any chance of harm.
What are you gonna do with me? And what about if the people from the garage find out what happened, or anybody?
Mr. Palmer said,
Well, Jeff, mishaps happen on the highway at night, mainly during storms, so hardly anyone is gonna think twice as to why you're gone. And if anybody decided to start poking their little face around here, let's just say I have my ways to discourage that type of activity. As for why I'm doing this,
Jeff, you need not worry about that. In fact, you need not worry about anything anymore.
Jeff looked into Palmer's eyes as he walked towards him. His eyes were completely black. Jeff tried to scream.